music. Actually, that's a little strange music for you guys. You get it to be like electronic. Oh, hey. Hello. My name is Tom Moran. I'm the professor for the course. We have here also Shaunuk, who's a TA, and he's also been an instructor teaching courses for us. So we have a very good TA, and we may have another quarter-time TA. We have up on Blackboard now the introductory packet. And today I'm going to start off real easy. My first class is always easy. I'll go over the introductory packet and just talk about a few things. The introductory packet contains a number of things. First, it has a definition and description of financial engineering. Then we have a syllabus for the course. Then the third thing, we have course organization and administration, which is pretty boring. And then fourth, we have a student profile. Please make out this student profile at your convenience and scan it and send it back to Blackboard. Is that,
Yeah, I'll email it to me.
Yeah, or email it to Shaunuk, but probably easier to Blackboard, right? And also, we'll probably do the homework mailed into Blackboard. It's easy. Okay, let's talk about financial engineering. You hear a lot about financial engineering today, and a lot of times you hear a lot of bad things about financial engineering. They blame financial engineering for all kinds of things. But in fact, financial engineering is really creating financial instruments that have certain risk properties. So you want to, what the idea with financial engineering is try to engineer a portfolio so that you can control your risk. So that is exactly opposite of the blame. They blame financial engineering because some of the things that we'll talk about will end up being things that are blamed. We make a blame on, like the so-called derivatives. You'll hear a lot about derivative instruments. And derivatives are nothing more than things that derive their value from some underlying asset, like futures and options. You could have futures and options, say, on corn. So you're not really trading corn, but you're trading a future or an option on corn. So that's why it's derived from that. It has nothing to do with derivatives in terms of mathematics here. Okay. And the market on derivative instruments is enormous right now. We had some 170 trillion during the spring of 2003. That's a long time ago. It's 10 years ago. I mean, it's a little dated. We have an amazing amount of stuff. In fact, one thing Shaunuk is working on his dissertation on, they have credit default swaps. Credit default swaps, they have more money in credit default swaps than are in all the other markets. Now, let's look at the syllabus a little bit. That's on page 3. Okay. On the top of the syllabus, I give both my office and my home phone number. I found that this is useful because distant students, you can't really ask questions in class. So if you have a question or a comment or something, feel free to call me at my home phone number. Don't be embarrassed. A lot of students take advantage of that, and I think it's a good way to communicate. Because a lot of times email communication doesn't say everything. Okay. Now Shauna will be the TA. My email address, the one I prefer, is tmorin1@aol.com. On campus, I'm tmorin@purdue.edu. But that is read infrequently because we have a lot of spam comes into there. Now the textbook is very good. It's called, let's see if they can zoom in on it here. Well, let me hold it up here. It's Investment Science by David Leuenberger. Now, you probably find out or have heard when you bought this book, I think later this summer, they're going to come out with a second edition of this book, finally. But we're using a first edition, so we won't get so make sure you don't buy the second edition because you'll get confused in terms of homework assignments. Typically, when they change the edition, the page numbers and some of the homework changes. I'm looking forward to the second edition because I like the first edition very much. The first edition, our textbook perhaps has the best treatment of portfolio theory of any book. But there's another book, there's another alternate reference. And this is an excellent, I should say excellent, is a book simply called Investments. And it's by 3 authors, Bodie, Kane, and Marcus. Okay. Now, this book, if you buy the book, the latest edition of this, it's quite expensive. It's well over $100. But you don't really need the latest edition. They have a new edition every year. So what I would do would be online buy a used copy of a previous edition. And some people have even said that, like at books.com, you can get this for less than the cost to ship it. People have gotten this book for $1.50 a previous edition. And then I think it's a couple dollars to ship it. But I would recommend it. It's an excellent, excellent book because especially if you don't know that much about investments. This contains all the introductory material that you'll need. Our book, Leuenberger, is a little more mathematical and presupposes some things. But Bodie, Kane, and Marcus is very comprehensive. I like it a lot. And in fact, I'll take material from there from time to time. But let's talk about what we have in the course here. The topics here. Well, first we'll do portfolio theory. And it says plus relevant material from multi-objective optimization. Let me explain this a little bit. Why do we need some relevant material from multi-objective optimization? This is not contained in our textbook, but I'll go over this completely. Another thing we'll do that I think you'll like is that after each lecture, we will scan all the notes that I wrote down. And then so you'll have both the online streaming, plus on Blackboard you'll have a copy of the notes. Okay. Now, why do we care about? Why do we do multi-objective optimization? Let's assume that we can estimate the expected rate of return and we'll call this R sub I for each of n stocks. And we'll have I equals 1 to n. Okay. Then, if we want to form an optimal portfolio of these stocks, we have the following problem. Okay, and let's see what this problem is. We're going to let Wi equal the proportion of our budget invested in stock I. Or you could say that's the proportion of our budget used to purchase shares of stock I. Then our problem is the following, is to maximize the sum I equals 1 to n over n stocks of what? Of Wi times Ri, R bar I. So we want to maximize the expected rate of return on our portfolio. So this is the portfolio rate of return. And we have the following. We have it subject to that the sum of the Wi I equal 1 to n equals 1. So we want to make sure that we use up our whole budget. Right? Here we have to use up our whole budget. And typically, we have Wi is greater than or equal to 0. It doesn't always have to be that way. If we had a Wi that was negative, it would mean that we were shorting that stock. We'll talk about shorting in a second. Now, suppose this is our problem. This is a simple LP problem, linear programming problem. Okay, we call this LP. You don't have to know anything about linear programming in this course, but that's what we call it, because we're maximizing a linear objective function subject to a linear constraint here. This is the objective function, this is the constraint. Now, if this is the problem, what's the solution? Well, the solution is, if this is our problem, the solution is obvious. And the obvious solution is that let, say, Wk equal 1 for the stock K having the largest R bar sub K, and Wi equals 0 for all I not equal to K. So you would simply put all your money in the stock that had the highest expected rate of return. Okay. Now, if this was a problem, we wouldn't need to talk about finance here. But what's the problem here? What complicates it? We have to account, but we have to account for risk. And risk is typically measured by the variance or standard deviation. We typically use the standard deviation and the rate of return. Okay. And the standard deviation is typically, we'll call this sigma I. Okay. Sigma I is a measure of the spread of that, around that. Now, so what do we want? Then we want to maximize R bar, the sum of the R bar I, Wi, I equals 1 to n. And we want to minimize the risk of our portfolio. And I won't write that out. We'll talk about that in a second, how we write that out. So what we have is that we're maximizing 1, We're minimizing in others. So we have two objectives problem. And so we have more than one objective. The problem becomes a little trickier to how we define an optimal solution to this problem. That's why we talk about multiple objective optimization. Now, we'll spend a lot of time on portfolio theory, but not all our time on portfolio theory. We have a whole bunch of other topics. We have the so-called capital asset pricing model, CAPM. Okay, and for the capital asset pricing model, a Nobel Prize was awarded in economics for the development of that. Also, in portfolio theory, there have been several Nobel Prizes. So the material in the course is very interesting. It's mathematically interesting, intellectually interesting. It's been the topic of a number of Nobel Prizes. Plus, it's immediately applicable. So it will be to a point. After you take this course, you should know how to manage your retirement accounts very well. It helps in everything. And the course is not just for stocks. It's just like if instead of thinking of stocks, you could think of these things as projects that a company is doing. And the project has a expected return, and there's a risk involved with the project. So what you want to do is instead of finding a portfolio of stocks, you want to find a portfolio of projects to undertake. Okay. Now the third thing is called factor models. And arbitrage pricing theory. Okay. Factor models, just to say that they're trying to suppose that you want to get an equation that would tell you that so you could estimate the expected rate of return on a stock. And you could have a one-factor model. Suppose that that's related to the expected rate of return on the market portfolio. That's what the CAPM does. Or you could have a couple factors on that. You could look at the things about the macroeconomy, and you could have internal factors that would be like the price-earning ratio of a stock. So you have multiple factors. Now, arbitrage pricing theory is some interesting thing. Let's talk about arbitrage for a second. What is arbitrage? Example of arbitrage. Okay, let's take a monetary example. Suppose that you could purchase euros for $1.20 US per euro. Okay? And you found someone who would buy euros for $1.30 per euro. Okay, so he's willing to buy the euros for that. Now, if you look today, the euro is about 1.28. In other words, $1.28 you need to buy 1 euro here. Okay, so what would happen? And now, what happens then, if you bought, suppose that you bought 1,000 euros. So you invested, to buy 1,000 euros, you invested $1,200. Okay. Now, you turn around, then turn around and sell these euros. And you would get $1,300. But somebody's going to pay you $1.3 per euro. So what would happen here is that you have an immediate risk-free gain of $100. And in fact, if you could play this game, why worry about just putting 1,000 euros? Why not put 1,000,000 euros or 1,000,000,000 euros? This is arbitrage. Now, the problem with most models consider that no arbitrage is possible. But there are people there are people called arbitrageurs who look for mispriced securities. Now, in finance and money exchange, arbitrage almost never exists. There are computers looking for arbitrage immediately all over the world, of all markets. And even if it did exist, and some firm or a hedge fund found that, and they jumped in and played this game, then that window would close immediately. So if there is ever a window, it will close almost instantaneously. So most models assume no arbitrage, because in reality, there's not really much arbitrage. Okay, let's talk about what else we do. Oh, good. We have the theory of capital. And various interest rates. Okay. Now, the theory of capital is really how interest rates are set. And also, you might, if you want to talk about the, say, about the two biggest lies that are told in finance is the check is in the mail and money has time value. Now, you always hear this, this is a fundamental theorem of engineering economics, is that money has time value. The only thing wrong with that is that it's wrong. If you put a dollar bill under your pillow and you come back in a year, it's still a dollar bill. It didn't grow or shrink. What gives the illusion of money having time value is interest rates. Interest rates create the time value. Money in and of itself has no time value, but the interest rates create that. And so we're going to talk about a lot of interest rates. And we'll talk about, there have been some scandals about some interest rates there. The LIFO interest rates, the London Interbank Offer Rate, you might have read, had some recent scandals in banks setting that. So we'll have a little section on that. That's very interesting. Then we'll talk about utility theory. And risk aversion. Okay, this is interesting stuff. We'll see how decision makers are risk averse, and even firms are very risk averse. We'll see some nice examples about that. And then 6, we're going to talk about forwards, futures, and swaps. Forwards and futures are almost the same thing. These are derivatives. And then another derivative we'll talk about, a future, you can either buy or sell an asset at a certain price at a certain future date. Now, an option, here you're required to buy or sell it. An option is also a derivative, but it gives you the right to buy it, but not the obligation to buy or sell it. Okay. And we'll talk also here, we'll talk about some option combinations and strategies. How you can use options and combine stocks with options. Then the 8th thing is and one of the final things is option pricing theory. And here we have the binomial lattice. Model. And the famous Black-Scholes equation. A Black-Scholes equation, Black and Scholes plus Merton, Myron Scholes got the Nobel Prize for this. Black, unfortunately, died before the Nobel Prize was awarded here. So one thing I always tell my students, if you do something famous, try to keep your health up, because you can't get the Nobel Prize if you're dead. So unfortunately, Black didn't get the Nobel Prize. Also, there are a lot of interesting things about this paper. This paper is the most cited paper in finance. However, it was rejected 3 times from different journals when it went in. So you shouldn't get discouraged if your paper is rejected here. The Nobel Prize winning paper, the most famous paper of all in finance, got in here. So that's a cute thing on that. Okay, let's talk about some more mundane things. The so-called course organization and administration. This is kind of like the thing in grade school or high school, which you had the first day. Okay. Grading here will be based on one midterm exam written homework and extra credit assignments, and a project. Now, the grading will be at 1/3 on that exam, 1/3 on the homework and extra credit, and 1/3 on the project. We'll talk about the project in a second. A prerequisite, this is an introductory course, so all the mathematics and finance you'll need will be covered in the course. Okay. The only some background and familiarity with calculus and engineering economics is required. Even that you could skim by. And the exam will count for 1/3 of your grade. The exam will be closed book, except you can bring two 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper that you write on or cut things out on or even print on. So that so-called cheat sheets. Okay. Here we talk about makeup exams and we're aware that distant students have serious time constraints, and also they may have to travel from time to time. So sometimes for homework and exams, we try to be as we try to take into account your constraints as much as possible. If you can't take the exam on a certain date, or you can't turn in the homework because you're away on travel, we'll take that into convenient way. So I wouldn't pay that much attention to all that was said there. Now the homework, we'll typically try to give homework once a week. Probably in the beginning we won't give homework the first week, and typically we don't want to give homework during an exam week. Yeah. The homework will count for 1/3 of your grade, so I put a lot of emphasis on the homework because I think you learn a lot in the homework. Now the extra credit is something different. Extra credit is like insurance. Extra credit can be used to bump you up to the next grade if you're within 1 point of a cutoff here. And you've done 50% or more of the person who did the highest extra credit total. So extra credit is exactly like insurance. Extra credit only helps you if you're on the border and done 50% or more of that, of the person doing the highest. It's not added to your homework. So the extra credit are typically, maybe the problems are a little harder or a little more interesting. I encourage you to do extra credit if you have the time and you find it interesting, because typically we bump up, at least 10% of students get bumped up to the next grade. The course will be curved, of course, so we won't be on an absolute scale, but even with a curved, anybody who gets 90 or above in my course will automatically get an A. Okay, now partial credit. Now we give partial credit on exams, and we also give partial credit on the homework. So if you have a problem that, if we didn't see the wisdom of your ways or how you solved the problem, or if we even made a arithmetic mistake, simply for an exam or for the homework, attach a note to it explaining why you think you deserve more points. We'll be glad to look at that and consider that. But we won't do, actually in distance, we don't have to talk about face-to-face confrontations here. Also, like I said, it said don't merely write, please check problem number blank. Give a reason for it. Now, we'll use Blackboard for the homework assignments, the scanned notes, and a lot of other things. Now, course project. The course project is usually, a lot of people like this is the most interesting part of the course, because here's where you get to design your part of the course. And typically, we have teams of people, of 2 or 3 students, taking on a project. We've even had, at one time I remember we had 3 students in 3 different countries on a project. They did a very nice project too. You know, with the internet, things like this become possible. We have a suggested partial list of topic areas. Now, you're not limited to this. Anything that falls within the realm of financial engineering, you're allowed. But please tell us about something. If you want to do something that's not on the list, you can do that. But let us know, and we'll see if we approve of that. We typically approve of these type of things. I think it says that that the first team to pick a particular topic will own that topic, and no other team will be able to choose it. We ignore that from time to time. We've had several teams pick certain projects. So I would like you to pick the project pretty soon. It said by the 4th week. Otherwise, we're going to try to put the teams together. Give yourself enough time here. You know, especially this course has a break in the middle around July 4th. It has about a 2-week break. So hopefully by that break, or at least by the end of that break, you definitely should have your project and team together. Because the summer course moves fast here. Hopefully you're going to find this course interesting, very applicable to not only your own finance, but to your company's financial strategies and risk management. So I would call the course Financial Engineering and Risk Management, really. It's not just financial engineering. That's about all I'm going to do for the first day. We'll get you out a little bit early here, and we'll begin in earnest tomorrow. Okay, so welcome aboard. Try to look up that Bodie, Kane, and Marcus book, and start watching CNBC if you haven't. You can see that the market's been doing great. You don't have to take the course. You just have to have invested in the market to be doing great. But I don't know how much longer the market is going to go up. That's got me worried. In fact, today I might lighten up a little bit on my retirement portfolio. Okay. Thanks an awful lot, and welcome aboard. If you have any questions, you can feel free to call me or send the questions into Blackboard, and Shauna will take care of it. And we'll see you tomorrow.